Hello and welcome back to Kerbal Explosive Kolonisation. So, we're starting where we left off. A few more correction burns for our lovely little ship. And while this is going on, I have a bit of an apology. Things are slightly drawn out. I've had a few little problems and I've not been particularly well the last week, so this is a bit of a slower paced video. I wanted to sort of show some things in depth, and there was a lot of stuff, a lot of kiss movements, moving things about and getting things fastened, which to me, when you're watching them back, oh god, it's worse than watching paint dry. But yeah, so I thought I'd sort of have a little bit more explanation on how things are going on. I've got a couple of interesting questions, so I thought I would sort of explain things here and there. So, on with the show. So, once we've got everything corrected and intercepting for Eve, we jump over to Lathe and we are grabbing our new ship, our new space plane, not space plane, our new atmospheric plane that we've created. And this is essentially exactly what I created before. I haven't changed anything on it. So the last one, as some people saw, I started up, flew it and flipped it over and smashed the roof. And there was nothing much I could do with it, so I just built a new one. So we've finally got it up and running, and I've put Orly in it so that I can get it out of loading range. That's all I'm doing, it's not going far. But because we have these lovely vertical engines on it, we can take off in, I think it's about 20 meters or so. And this thing's fairly well loaded. As you can see there, it's actually full of resources because I messed up when I built the thing. And yes, somehow it ended up full of resources and I really don't know what's going on. But we fly it out of loading range and then we do a little slow descent with it. So it's just turning off the main engines, turning on the vertical ones, and then slowly tipping back and letting it reduce speed. This can land vertically, but it's easier if you just use the engines to land it slowly. So in here we have our mining equipment, a couple of radiators, a couple of drills, and this thing is just built to gather a whole load of rocket parts and things like that. So we head back over to the base where we clear up some of the detritus on the ground, and we also remove the landing stakes. The reason that I'm removing them is because they're actually, one of them was underneath the base now that I've added onto it and not paid attention to where my landing stakes were. But we get everything sorted, we do a little bit of additions to the base and then grab one of our buggies and head out with an engineer so that we can get to our plane that's been flown away, and we're going to go hunting for some minerals. Nice and simple, over to the plane, park up. These rovers are drone rovers so they can be driven back from pretty much anywhere. I still have a few black spots in my coverage for the actual drone control, but I'm going to launch a few more satellites later on just to cover that so that I've got the entire surface covered. But we retract the radiators, get everything sorted up, turn because we're heading almost straight west. But we've got a fair bit to fly, and as I'm flying things start heating up, and unfortunately I lose those two nose cones in my engines. Luckily they didn't contain any fuel or anything because this thing doesn't require any fuel, so it actually flew not too badly. So just showing an actual vertical landing for once, tipping back, bringing it in nice and slowly, and then it's just literally a case of balancing and counteracting what you can see there. And the way that I do it, just to get it a little bit easier when you hit the ground, is literally kill your engine the second you land. Instead of throttling down, actually turn the engine straight off. And there you can see a bit of the excess heat that we had. Meanwhile, back on Kerbal, we don't have much money. so I'm going exploring for some resources. As I said, I wanted to set up a bit of a uranium mine. I'm trying to figure out an easy way of making some resources on Kerbal, or close to Kerbal, that can give me a constant supply of money. But we fly over the hills, not too far away from the KSC, and I actually pick up a signature for uranium, for uranite. So a little bit of a vertical landing. VTOLs seem to be the thing these days, at least for me. And I hit the wrong button there. But we go rummaging around, and this is where I realised that I've done a horrible mistake with this. So all I did was mine some uranite. But the problem that I actually did was I didn't have it set up to refine into uranium. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, these things happen. So we take our uranite and I decide to recover it just like this. And because practice makes improvement, I'm just trying to land on the roof of the VAB with a VTOL. And I glide a bit too far to the side and... interesting. So yeah, fun and games. Hover about a little bit. Lose a part of the engine, but it's not too bad. And we are back on Lathe yet again. So this time I've got my plane out, and I decide to send the VTOL out there. And the entire point of this was I was going to make a base for extracting some things at the same time. So we take a little bit of a trip in the VTOL, which these gulls are just so slow. It took so long to get around compared to the jet. The jet was a 10-minute flight. This thing was, I don't even know how much. But unfortunately, as you can see, I'm not pretty great at landing. And what I've just lost there actually unbalances this entire craft, so it is now not flyable. Still usable as base portions, but not flyable. So I decided to set up to manufacture things from rocket parts. However, what I don't realise is that I don't have the right module loaded into this plane to actually create rocket parts. Even though I have all the resources for them, I don't have the ability to actually create them. So this is a moment of realisation that I have to fly this entire thing all the way back. But these things happen, and it's well, it's a side effect of the way I play. I'm not planning too far ahead. But I fly all the way back, and being a lazy person, I leave the drills out all the way back to the base. And because I've lost those nose cones, I figured I'm just going to recycle this plane and build a new one that is a little bit better. This has a little bit of problems. I had to down the thrust on the wing mounted engines, because otherwise at high speed they can flip the entire plane and it becomes a bit of a problem. So we're bringing this in fairly close this time, which does cause a problem with the frame rate. But I can sort of manage because I tidied up most of my other things. But as you see, I have a problem coming in because bad pilot, and we flip, and we nearly save it, and we lose an engine. Ah well. So we get the crew back at least, and we have all of the minerals back that I brought here. And I've only just noticed, looking at this right now, that I actually lost 2 engines on the right hand side, so yeah. But out we go, we do a bit of recycling. Again, a few more base mods, because I have strange and unusual problems with parts of the base. But we get everybody out, we trash some of the things that we're going to recycle, but these things happen. And we get everybody back in. Well, we actually do some more base mods first. But then it's time for the recycling, so I try and find a bit I can latch onto to recycle the whole thing, and hey, look at all those resources. Actually not really gaining much. I'm getting some more equipment. But then It's time for some missions. So back on Kerbal, we launch our strange little plane. Now, I have a lot of space planes that have single letter designations of difference, and the problem is some of them are tested and some of them aren't, and some of the ones that are tested were changed slightly. And yeah, I've had strange problems with them. Now this is, as you can see, this one launches to orbit beautifully, that's why I kept it all the way in. But what I did was, before I launched it, I added a little KISS package because I need some money, and this is my main sort of driving motivation back on Kerbal, is that I need more money. At this particular point in time I think I'm in the region of like 60,000 credits, and that's all. And I can only take 2 more missions because I have so many missions that are loaded and I have the cash for, but they're like plant a flag on Dres, plant a flag on Eve, which I don't have anybody there anymore, and they're things that are going to take time to do. So we get hooked on, we grab our KISS parts, and the entire reason for this was so that we can slap on some parachutes, because my idea is to re-enter this. So we undock, this time with only the pilot. And we do a fairly aggressive deceleration, so you know the way that I do it these days. So we hammer in, aiming for the KSA, as close into the ground as possible because we should be able to glide the distance from there. And then I tip back, but I tip back too much. And we end up going backwards through the atmosphere. We managed to survive, but I'm unbalanced and I can't recover. Now there's something else wrong here, I don't know what it is. But yeah, this I've flown this in testing before, but somehow something goes wrong. So I decide to bail because we're getting really close to the ground, and then I didn't get the parachute button fast enough, and little Aggie died. So luckily Bill doesn't know what's going on. So in the next orbit, nobody tells him about this, and he decides to try his luck, recovering the try. And because we're coming in a bit short, I want to land on the water because I figure it'll be softer and provide me with a higher chance of recovering things. So we get the burning effects and we start decelerating just to try and keep it down. So obviously this thing was never designed to come back into the atmosphere. But we're decelerating, we make it through transonic. Drogue shoots out. Main shoots out. Oh, it's looking dangerous. More engine. Now the engine's pretty much useless, and then I run out of fuel. And that was a lot more damage than I expected. So, we don't have the money we needed. We have some, but not much. Meanwhile, we are out at Eve, and I'm just inspecting what I've got out here. So I still have the hammer out here. Unfortunately, the hammer doesn't have any fuel left, so it's just sat there dead. But we do have little Genlong sat out here in the hammer. It's got plenty of food. Got years and years and years worth of food and can recycle most everything else. But unfortunately, can't do much else aside from that. So he's just sat in the orbit. And while I'm here, I'm just checking out some of the other craft. This is one of my other launcher craft, which should have a drone control probe in it, but turns out it doesn't. So that one sat there dead. At least it's some resources for the people coming out though. So from there we head back to Lathe and we do a bit of science on our orbital station, the Heaven 1. And it's time to expand the station. So all I'm doing is I'm double checking the resources that I've got there. and have a good look around searching for things and make sure everything's configured and working for recycling things. I'm gonna get it processed in science and then bring the rest of the crew down to Lathe for the moment. And my plan is to get a couple of launches going that are going to head back to Kerbal, that are going to bring materials, processed materials back and get me a bit more money at some point. But for people that saw it, I have this little abomination of a mass driver, and I figured while it was in orbit I might as well try and dock it and use it. So it's got everything on it, it's working, it's just misaligned because there was a problem. I think it was procedural parts was messing about with extraplanetary launch pads. That's a problem that's been fixed now, so if you update everything, if you've had this issue, you shouldn't get it anymore. But for the moment I'm just getting this docked in. We've got plenty of fuel for this. This has got far more delta V than it needs. So we get everything set up, everything rotated around. Now the way that these mass drivers work is they're part of the Pathfinder mod, and you can fire things from the surface to orbit, from orbit to another orbit I believe. But you can't do orbit to ground. You can do surface to surface. And they require bandwidth to be able to be fired, and I'm not exactly sure how it works, but basically they constantly produce an amount that gives you a set amount. You require the bandwidth, you require liquid fuel and oxidizer, and then you can throw things from one to the other. I still haven't got it working yet, but we shall see fairly soon. So back on the surface I create a little SSTO, again from the DSEV mod, and as a bit of a trial, because I can't test these things out on Kerbal and I can't launch them to test them, so these are sort of rough guesses at craft. And unfortunately I tipped too far forward and it's a little unstable, and I can't pull it back up. So I know that I'm coming back down to the ground, which means I'm just going to try and have to turn around and boost back to the base. So that's what this is, basically trying to turn around and get back to the base so that I land fairly close, because I really don't like rescuing Kerbals at the sea. So there we go, just using the map and the trajectories mod to try and get roughly back to the base. And we're out of fuel. Oh god. So it shoots out, legs out. I love these little heat shield legs. I wish they'd be in a couple of sizes, but this heat shield's something else. I think it's brilliant. However, we have recovered, so we try launching a new one and I lose all of the footage, but it's up at the space station. That's all you need to know. So as you can see here, I've put in a second pad because I had to replace them because the temperature, as you can see there, they can't handle the temperature from a lot of the rockets. So I've put up the temperature in my mod so that they don't explode so often, but I actually went through 7 rocket pads before doing that, and I think I have 3 spares in the actual base because, yeah. But I eventually got fed up enough that I actually jacked. I only put the temperature up by 1000 degrees. I've not tested it yet, so it might work, it might not. We'll see what happens. Doing a little bit of a spin there to try and get rid of my boosters. And this is my, I believe, this is my next, yes it is. This is my next mass driver. So this one is all in line and looks proper. So I'm going to pull the old one off, recycle it for equipment, and then put the new one on. I figured that was the easiest way to do it. So we undock, we get everything separated, and then it's just a bit of a docking manoeuvre. One off, one on, and recycling a whole load of equipment. So while I get these into a line where they can be safely sort of docked together, or at least so they don't drift too far apart, it becomes time to get Kerbal out. So we get our little engineer out, and he then goes back in to check if there's space for equipment, which there now is. And out we go! So he's not high enough to recycle an entire vessel, so part at a time we start recycling. Clink, clink, clink. And there we go, we get the equipment from all of that stuff. And then we get back in and set up a docking node. Docking node? Docking node. Ah, well, I can't talk today. It's been a long week and I'm still dying. I'm not sure if you can hear it in my voice, but my throat's all sort of gone. I just have plague. But there we go, we have a mass driver locked on. And seeing as I had too much delta V, that was me just setting the entire vessel to consume resources. But seeing as I had enough delta V and I still had a bit of fuel in this, I figured I would actually recycle the entire rocket, and that way I'd sort of keep Lathe a little bit cleaner, at least the orbit of Lathe a little bit cleaner. So there we go, part at a time recycling, and you can see in the top left all the stuff that I'm getting from it, fuel and oxidizer and yield bits. So back down on the base, on the landing base, we have our next one to launch. And we lose yet another launch pad. But this time I just throttle up full and go for orbit. Pulling in the landing gear. Jettisoning the boosters. And then it's a little squirrely because of the vector engines, also because of how much is in it. So jettisoning the fairings, and this module is actually a power module. It has 8 of the safer reactors on board to give me enough power to actually run the mass driver. And again, I've overestimated with the fuel. So while I'm doing this, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, why not use the fuel containers? Because these are part of the DSEV mod. They have can't speak today. They have configurable storage, and I've put this thing together without this intention, but I've put this thing together with docking nodes. So I thought, well, why not just keep everything attached? Those 2 containers are great for storage for me. So we undock, we have a look at what we're going to do. So we move the station round. Now this module here is just basically it's a rocket parts factory, and then some power for the mass driver. This is the beginnings of my space facility for building in space. And it also has a bit of there's a drone module on there for any cargo that I want to drop back down for the moment. As you can see here, because the RCS is unbalanced, it is squirrely as you can get, but we get the station docked to the fuel tank. So I have more storage. And after trying to dock, I noticed that the other module was actually out of RCS entirely, so we docked the station to it and then increased the orbit slightly. I think I do that after this. I just go through and recycle the non-needed parts, the landing legs that were there for the takeoff. I try and recycle the actual decouplers, but it's not having it. Well, we get all the legs, which gives us a decent amount of equipment, and then the engines, which gives us a good amount of equipment per engine. And there we go, we have a storage section. So a little while later, after having rebuilt the pads, you can see that I changed the position of them every time. We're time warping a little bit forward. I'm just trying to get some things produced in time warping to the new rockets are ready. But that is us. So we have 2 rockets on the build pad, and I'm going to launch them next time because this is running really long. But yeah, I thought I'd keep most of that in so that I could show you what's going on and show you more of my sort of launches and things like that. But the plan that's going on at the moment is to get the factory in space ready to build some big vessels and to have some parts ready, some ships ready to ferry good high value resources back to Kerbal so that we can have a bit more money for a bit more exploration off of Kerbal, and also get some more recruits because I've killed several of them unfortunately, but these things happen. So the usual palaver, like and subscribe, and for me leave comments if you liked this and enjoyed this. Any comments are welcome, suggestions, criticisms, and just generally be polite, it's always nice. And I shall see you next time. Bye!